Welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk about improvising on the classical guitar. With classical guitar technique, getting a classical guitar sound, but improvising. So I don't mean just improvising on a classical guitar, but playing the blues scale, playing jazz licks or something like that. I'm talking about improvising classical music in the language of classical music from classical etudes and repertoire and the proper technique, but just not only reading the notes off the page or playing only the piece of music. This is something that is overlooked in classical guitar pedagogy, and I wish it wasn't. I don't think it should be. I think that improvising is something that we can do with any style or sound or approach or instrument or whatever. It just means that you are making it up as you go. And in classical guitar, I always have my classical guitar students do this at least a little bit, if not a lot, and I do it myself with any piece that I'm working on. So it's not just improvising anything, it's improvising in the context of something that we're working on, taking the language kind of from a piece of music and saying, oh, well, where did that come from in the first place? Can I play around with that? So I think a lot of us do that kind of intuitively here and there sometimes when we start to get used to something regardless of the style, but I'm talking about doing it kind of as an intentional etude exercise, as a way of a kind of a step along the way of determining how well we know a piece of music, including classical guitar music. And so on top of that, there's theory involved. There's some ear training involved, more so I think than just playing from memorization, specific notes. So I think it's hugely valuable, and I really encourage it quite a bit. So I'm going to show you one of the first ways that I would encourage someone to improvise on the classical guitar. So there's a common classical guitar technique that is just a very common arpeggio technique, and there's a lot of ways to work on arpeggios, but there's one that is very common that's just up and down like this in these groups of 3 or a group of 6 if you want to think of it that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes this is emphasized as a planting technique, a planting arpeggio, full plant versus sequential plant. What planting means is when you're preparing the note. So a full plant means you're putting down multiple fingers at once and then plucking them individually after they're placed. So I'll play the thumb. Right after I play the thumb, I'm going to plant all 3 of these fingers, my I, M, and A finger, my index, middle, and ring finger, all 3 of those on these top 3 strings, and then pluck them. And then on the way down, I'll plant and pluck, individually plant and pluck. Planting is technically happening all the time. It just means that your tiny, tiny little moment of preparing the note. But this idea of the full plant is necessary for a certain technique in classical guitar, in this arpeggio realm, to get it fast enough. So that's actually what I'm going to have you do, but not necessarily at that speed. It's quite difficult to get to that speed. It can be done in a very relaxed way, but we have to do that full plant. But doing this exercise even very slow, even without the full plant, and you just go what would be called sequential plant, where you plant and then pluck, plant, pluck, plant, pluck, plant, pluck, and really it just sounds like you're playing these individual notes. We're going to use that, whether you're going to try to do it fast or slow or any speed. It's going to sound really nice, something to work on. We have to know a scale on the top string to get it to happen. I'm extracting this from a very common and popular etude that is by the composer Mauro Giuliani. And it's just an arpeggio etude that uses this, usually etudes or studies are doing some kind of one-dimensional technique, but then having a nice piece of music that you can work on it with so it sounds good and it's fun, it's musical, but yet you're working on a specific element of your playing. So that etude So that etude is just doing that the whole time. And there's a portion of it where it's just going along the top string. That's the end of the piece. So the whole end of the piece. And I just did a video a couple weeks ago on calibrating your right hand. And this is that's a great video to check out if you want the security and kind of consistency of the right hand. See, right now I'm feeling like I could use some more of that to get the sound that I want, but right now it's more about the improvisation that I want you to do. So first, we just want to be able to do this E minor chord, this open E, this open G, this open B, and this open E. This is a complete E minor chord. Play the 6th string, the 3rd string, the 2nd string, the 1st string. Okay? And then I want you to go P, I, M, A, M, I. Thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index. Okay? If you want to do a plant, a full plant where you go all 3 of these down, great. If you want to do it faster that way, great. If you don't, no problem. Okay. Now we have, and I just want you to be able to do that nice and consistently. Now we have to know an E minor, E natural minor scale along the top string. So E natural minor scale is going to be 7 notes, and I want you to think of it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there's a couple ways to think of it, but think of it this way for a sec, because we really want to know the structure of a major scale as our foundation of all things theoretical. So everything can be related back to that in tonal music in theory. So we want to know that so crazy well. So I'm going to start you with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just 7 notes. 3 and 4 are a half step apart, and 7 and 1 are a half step apart. That is our major scale. And if you don't know that yet, then practice that a little bit first, actually, where we go 1 to 2 is not a half step, it's a whole step. 2 to 3 is not a half step, it's a whole step. 3 to 4 is one of those places, half step. So there's 4. 4 to 5 is a whole step. 5 to 6 is a whole step. 6 to 7 is a whole step. 7 to 1 is a half step. 3, 4, 7, and 1 are half steps. Everything else is a whole step. So we want to really know that and be comfortable with it. The reason I'm saying that now is because we're working on E natural minor. Well, if we know that well, and then we know that, okay, E natural minor has a flat 3. 2 is in the same place, it has a flat 3. It has the same 4 and it has the same 5. And then it has a flat 6 and a flat 7. That's how, I know it's not, if you haven't heard that before, and you didn't even know the major scale, this could sound like a lot or complicated, but it's really a very secure way to be understanding that, and that information is going to be like used every time you play forever. So it's, even if at first it's like, whoa, this is a new language, it's just it's the way that we should be thinking about everything we're playing all the time. Where is it in the context of a root, of a key, of a tonality, of a chord, of something like that? Is this the 2? Is this the 3? Is this the flat 3? That kind of thing. So we have 1, 2 on fret 2, flat 3 on fret 3, 4 of the scale on fret 5, 5 of the scale on fret 7, flat 6 of the scale on fret 8. We'll go up to fret 10 for flat 7 of the scale, and then we're back at 1. And you could go up here to 2 and flat 3 if you want. So take some time to just be able to play with that. Notice I'm not saying note names at all. It's all about those numbers and those relationships, the actual scale degree numbers, as we could call them. Okay, so now you got your scale. I'm just playing around with it. Be able to play around with it. Be able to do this, and then you combine them together. So our goal with this is a couple things. Mostly it's to be able to work on these same techniques and sounds and timbres and all, everything we want from our control of classical guitar, as well as adding in the theoretical knowledge and the sound and the aural ability, and kind of having a context and a map for what's happening in a key, and especially if it's related to, hey, this is what's happening in this piece. I mean, this is what Giuliani knew like the back of his hand. He's probably improvising around like this all the time, and then saying, "Oh, I really like this. I'm going to write it into my piece." I mean, to the composers, you have to know that information. And so, why are we just learning how to play this stuff without understanding where it's coming from within keys and tonalities? So, it's to work on the playing mechanism. It's almost like an improvisation etude in a way. Like we're saying, here are parameters for what to play with, and now just play with it. It's pretty one-dimensional, right? It doesn't really compositionally go anywhere. There's not really a harmony change or anything like that, but that's okay. It's about the parameters we set. So other improvisational exercises will have those differences in there, and it'll sound even more like a piece of music. But even with this, one of our goals with it is to kind of fake out somebody for a moment, even to that it could sound like, oh, what piece is that? What classical piece is that? Again, it's kind of meandering, so it might not totally pull it off, but even for a moment, no reason why this can't be a little statement of a legit classical piece. I threw an extra note in there. So I threw a chromatic note in there. And you can add in other notes and then use your ear to resolve things or whatever. But if you're working on classical guitar and you're not working on a little bit of improvising, I really recommend it. I really think there's so much to gain from it. We should be doing just a little bit, even if that's just looking at, what are the notes that this piece that I'm working on, what are the notes? Where is it coming from? What's going on there? And then can I play with it? So that's the exact exercise I want you to work on, from this lesson. But if there was another piece, like here's a piece called Lagrima. Okay, well, what's happening here? There's an interval of a tenth, another tenth, and a minor tenth. It's just going through a key of E in tenths with an open B in there. If I take that idea and just play with it, I'm going to know how to play that piece so much better. I'm going to know it more deeply because of the language that it comes from. I'm not just like reciting a poem in a foreign language. I'm really understanding the context of where it comes from. So don't worry about the details that I was talking about right there. I'm more just saying, like, okay, can we manipulate around something? We're going to retain that piece in our memory so much longer if we have a little bit of that wiggle room to play around with it freely and improvise. So don't worry about it being like the coolest sounding piece. Just we're looking for that feeling of control. Like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Cool. This note sounds good next. This note sounds good next. And then if you can label it theoretically, even better. So cool. I hope you found that interesting and useful. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think. If you feel like saying something, I would love to hear from you, and love to see you in another lesson in the future. And happy practicing.